This episode of Transqat is available in video format on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/@transcat9607 or just search for Transqat channel. That's TRANSQAT. This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Claire McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Welcome to a bonus episode of Transqat. June has been a bit of an emotional seesaw. On the one hand, joyous pride events across the state. On the other, distressing news from the federal level. On the 18th, the Supreme Court in U.S. v. Skrmetti upheld a Tennessee law banning puberty blockers and HRT for minors, and this paves the way for similar laws in other states. That same day, the administration announced it was ending specialized prevention services for LGBTQ plus youth on its 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. On the 27th, the Supreme Court ruled that schools must allow parents to opt their kids out of any lessons that include references to LGBTQ plus people or issues. So I thought I would check in with community leaders here in Connecticut and find out what they were seeing and hearing on the ground as the 2025 Pride season winds down. If you're watching the video version of this show, the guests are identified on screen. If you're listening, you'll be hearing the following folks: Brianna Bloom-Scavera, organizer of Middletown Pride; Mel Cordner and Ace Ricker from Q+; Colin Hostin, the executive director of the Leonard Litz Foundation; Rachel Simon, the executive director of Triangle Community Center; Matt Blintstrubis, the executive director of Equality CT; Melissa Combs, the founder of the Out Accountability Project; Sam Avery of Sam Avery Media; and Haley Wilhelm, the owner-operator of the Crystal Woods. So congratulations on how well Middletown Pride went this year.
Thank you, Claire. It was lovely to have you there.
Are you feeling good about the way things went, other than the torrential downpours?
I don't know what you're talking about. At the last minute, we got an addition to 2025's Pride Fest. The rain decided to join our resistance, but it was Middletown Pride, our Pride Fest celebration was really good. You know, we were really wanting to focus on making sure we came together as a community, especially in wake of a lot of attacks on our community. And it was important to band together not only as, queer and trans people, but the people who love us, who support our community, despite the fact that the weather was ominous and wet. Our initial estimates is that the height of our march, we had 30,000 people on Main Street, which is about what we had consistently last year. So we got very close despite the weather. I was running around quite a bit behind the scenes, so I only got direct exposure to a few really just wonderful scenes out in public, because most of the time I was off the side of the stage or emceeing or trying to keep my sanity.
From my roadside view, I saw families. I saw people being free to express themselves. I saw celebration. I saw protest.
And the most touching and poignant part about Middletown's Pride Fest to me was actually kind of one of our pre-kickoff events that happened that day. At 11 a.m. before the Pride Fest officially started at noon, we hosted a drag performer reading hour at RJ Julia Booksellers on Main Street. And I went to go introduce the readers, Ivanova and Frizzy Borden. And as I was leaving, RJ Julia's Booksellers is set up so that there's kind of a mezzanine on the first floor looking into the basement where the event was being held. And there was a lot of people there, but I didn't realize until I was actually exiting the store to go to the next event on that day that there was no space on the mezzanine balcony looking down into the center because there was just so many folks. And I kind of was able to get a view from the mezzanine balcony down, and there wasn't an empty part of the carpet in the basement. It was just hundreds and hundreds of children and their families And the kids weren't necessarily identifying as any one thing. The kids were just being kids. And they looked happy and they were smiling and they were laughing as the drag artists were reading these stories. And their caregivers, their families, they all looked really just content. And there was this overwhelming wave of emotions because seeing children being loved and protected, it was a very transcendent feeling for me. It's so easy for those of us who are, in the background working all day long. We get lost in the minutia. And because we are always running, like, what's the next intro? What's the next stage time? Is this person's speech going to go in over? Like, what's happening with this vendor? It's good to see and have that moment where you see the outcome of your labor are people who are in a safe location feeling love. And that was the highlight for me.
So the Lady Bethesda is joining us for at least a little while.
Mine just yelled at me and ran away, so I don't know.
So, Mel, how's your Pride been?
Hi. Busy.
How many events have you tabled at so far?
All of them. Ever. Somehow.
Even the ones out of state.
Even those. I'm everywhere. We're all everywhere.
Yeah.
The entire Q Plus team is just like 27 raccoons in a trench coat. So we just split into our individual raccoon selves and just every state.
I am taking a second to deal with that mental image. I like it
fair.
a lot.
Take the time you need.
I see it just the trench coat just sort of floofing down like the Wicked Witch at the end of the Wizard of Oz, and except now raccoons are scattering.
Yeah, what do you think's in that inflatable unicorn? Not a person, I'll tell you that.
So, any highlights?
I feel like I'm not supposed to play favorites, but Middletown Pride's always a highlight for me. It's very cool for the kids to get to be part of a march. Like, there's not a lot of opportunity for kids to do that. So being a part of that, seeing just the biggest crowd that they're gonna see for a Pride, and knowing that all of those people are there to support them in their community and to like be there for them, especially right now, is just really uplifting for the kids. And that's kind of why I'm there. And then this year we had a kind of a doodle station. So we do sign making before the march. And secretly, that's just to get them there before traffic gets bad. Don't tell them.
It's okay. Right? No one listens to this podcast.
Oh no, false. I've listened to several. And then at the end, we get to our booth and we set up our doodle station, and kids just show up and start drawing stuff. And there were so many just cute random things. And it gives young people, like a timeout, chill out space in between all of the noise and the busyness that is a Pride festival. And it gives us cool art to put on our walls that we don't have because we don't have an office. So it's great. Some people are like attached to it, and some people are like, no, I was just here to sit still for a minute. Here's this weird cartoon. With
a raccoon in it. We don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. One time one of our staff did a paint night, and one of the kids painted the characters in the paint night, but added tails. And so I said, oh, wow, cats. Because obviously I said, oh, wow, cats. And they were raccoons. And I was very, very intensely scolded for thinking the raccoons were cats. So
it's a different kind of tail. It's a different kind of tail.
It is a different kind of tail. But like some cats have big poofy tails.
Yeah. Bethesda did.
Yeah.
I feel that's part of Pride is there's such a focus on what the weather is going to be like. Like if I'm Tapioca, which is the 9-foot inflatable unicorn, I need to make sure that it's under 80 degrees or I'm going to melt.
Yeah. Not unicorn days. They should start doing that on the weather channel. This is not a unicorn day.
Not unicorn day. Yeah, Pride overall, it's both a time of very like running around and can be exhausting, but it's really a great time of uplifting and empowering, and seeing the community that sometimes we get to see and a lot of times we don't. Especially I was very fortunate to be one of the Grand Marshals for Middletown Pride this year, and I got to see such a vast group of different individuals, people that I've never seen, that I have been friend requested because they've seen me at a speaking engagement or whatnot. I actually got to see people that I've known for a long time. I know like whether working with different people from PFLAG. Let's see, we have Planned Parenthood, a number of the parents who I work with Q Plus. I saw Reverend Aaron Miller, who I've done a number of things, Transgender Day of Remembrance for the last 14 years with him, and just really good spaces that I've held with him. I was fortunate yesterday. I was in my alternate ego of tapioca at the Firestone Cafe in Manchester. Q Plus had
Hmm.
a fundraiser. It's a pottery cafe, and we did painting with drag performers.
Oh, I've been there. That place is great. They have great lunches.
Oh yeah, I get they have an army chicken sandwich that if you've never had it, you should the chicken sandwich, and I always get a London fog. Yeah, the aspects of Pride are it's it's not just 1 month, even though collectively June is known for it. It is to enhance the awareness and visibility for those who do not feel safe or comfortable. It's to start conversations and continue those conversations, I feel. I had a sign that when I was marching, because one of the things this year that I was very fortunate to mark with Chris for as the other Grand Marshal is I asked him, I'm like, I don't want a convertible. I don't want to be just pageant waving. And the sign I had was, if your voice held no power, they wouldn't try to silence you. And that is for Pride, that's for a lot of different communities right now. And to be part of Pride and to be vocal is saying that people's voices have so much power behind them. And with that power, some people try to manipulate by using our voices in different ways that are inaccurate. And that's why I very much so say that Pride is a space that continues conversations and starts new ones.
How has Pride Month been going for the Leonard Litz Foundation?
Really, really terrific. 4 years ago now, we decided to put together what we call our little Pride Coalition. And the idea behind it is that we wanted to support and encourage folks to show pride and visibility every day, everywhere.
Hmm.
The idea is that if you live in a small town in Connecticut, you shouldn't have to take the train to New York or Boston to see representations of LGBTQ people being happy. We started, kind of focusing on Fairfield County, New Haven County, and down into Westchester. I would say I think we had about 20, groups represented. These are like larger organizations, 501(c)(3s, also smaller volunteer,
Yeah.
run by a couple parents and so on. And this year, I would say the coalition has over 50 towns represented in across Connecticut and New York. And it's just been wild to see. It could be something as simple as like we're gonna do a flag raising ceremony with some ice cream. And of course, on the bigger side, we have, Middletown Pride, which was another massive celebration of queer joy. So it's been really wonderful to see that sense of pride in every community, right? Because we live everywhere. We might as well
Yeah.
be visible everywhere. So I remember on it was the first day of Pride, June 1st. I went to Easton, Greenwich, White Plains, and Bridgeport. And I did so happily and joyously because at every single place I went, I found the same themes, which is this real sense of community, this
Hmm.
real sense. Of course, people want to party. Of course, people want to have fun, right? That's a big part of Pride too. But for us, and for me personally, probably the biggest thing is about coming together and being united as one community, right? It's LGBTQIAA plus plus plus. We're a lot of letters, and folks who are not part of the alphabet may think that we're all just one homogenized group, which is not always true. But what we are, human beings who come together for the sake of equal rights and human dignity. And that's what we've been seeing at every single celebration. I remember at Pride in the Park, which is hosted by Triangle Community Center. This is now, I don't know, maybe the 13th or 14th year they've had it, and it's grown so remarkably. I've been a board member of TCC, and so it's really great to see um, that how clinical and organized the event has become. So we're looking at the weather forecast. Obviously, it's Pride in the Park, and it's June 14th. It's 55 degrees. It's drizzly. It's rainy, and people are like, "Oh no, is this going to ruin Pride?" And I would say it was almost the exact opposite. I think our community looks at stuff like that and says, "No, no, 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 you can't rain on my parade."
Quite literally.
And yeah, quite literally. And so in fact the energy was to me even doubly joyous, people coming together and just celebrating our humanity.
I feel like a lot of queer people, and especially those who are professionally queer, I'm feeling tired. I was just strategizing with my my small town pride, thinking about next year, and I think we may hold our little pride festival in May, at the end of May next year, just because there are only 4 weekends in June.
Yeah.
We're going to avoid Father's Day weekend. We're going to avoid Juneteenth. We got criticized this year for holding Pride in the Park in Norwalk on Father's Day weekend, even though it was Saturday and not Sunday. And I know I was just talking to a colleague in South Florida. It's too hot in June to do it in South Florida, so they do it, I think, in September. And I know that in Minnesota, like there's some flexibility. So
Yeah.
yeah, I will say though that Triangle Community Center's Pride in the Park for Fairfield County in Norwalk is always going to be the second Saturday in June. So that you can count on.
What have been your takeaways, over the last 4 weeks? What have you been seeing? What have you been hearing?
I'm looking not just at the last 4 weeks, but the last 4 weeks in response to what's happened since January. Because after the election and before the inauguration, we were working hard to see what ways we could support the community before we knew what the new federal administration was going to do. So we started with partnering with the LGBT section of the Connecticut Bar Association and hosting legal clinics. So we've had folks come in to do second parent adoptions, and one family who said, I don't, we're both of our names are on the birth certificate. We're a same-sex couple, but we have, both of our and we're legally married. And then we said to them, you might want to take your kid to Disney World someday. And we don't know that your marriage will continue to be legal in Florida. And then another community member was like, you never know when your flight from the East Coast to the West Coast has an emergency and you stop in a place where maybe you don't have the same legal rights. Medical power of attorney and legal power of attorney, especially if they have maybe family members who are not supportive and wouldn't do things the way they would want them to. So that's been something that we've been doing all year. A project that we collaborated with was a name change and gender marker change clinic with Erin Miller from MCC Hartford and University of St. Joseph social workers. And so we hosted one, TCC hosted one at the First Congregational Church of Stamford, and helped, families who had come to Connecticut, one family from Florida, looking to protect their trans teenager, and another family with a trans 7-year-old who said, the current situation in our school is great and our kid is respected and protected, but should we take this moment before the administration makes changes to change their passport and birth certificate? What's it going to look like? And so it was great to have those partners to work with. So that's, we've been doing some of that scrambling and advocacy work. And also I'm in a group of other LGBT center executive directors where we've been, collaborating and trying to help each other. And so that's kind of the lead up to Pride. Then, Pride starts, and Middletown is the first Pride in Connecticut in June. It's the biggest Pride in the state. And TCC hosts a gender affirming block party. So we had gender affirming haircuts from Disco Baby Hair. The LGBT Bar Association president was there to give legal advice to folks.
I was in Westport the other day, and I talked to a couple who had just moved here. They were like, I was really struck, and it really reminded me like why Connecticut is such a great place to be. And like they had seen Connecticut as a very open and welcoming place. And this is a conversation that I've heard a lot, and we are hearing it in different settings. This was one of those I've heard, because I've talked to people who have fled to Connecticut.
Right.
It didn't sound like they were fleeing necessarily, but I've talked to people with trans kids, and people moving from more hostile places who are resettling here. We hear this all the time. And so it struck me that, okay, here's a couple that wasn't necessarily fleeing, but was seeing like what Connecticut in their eyes had to offer in terms of community, livability, and all that. And I went through this like mental checklist where I'm like, we have a lot. I'm hearing this, and it reminded me, we have a lot to live up to. In this, there's a perception that is not always true. It's nice to have this known, and to have this be true in this moment. But like, it doesn't take long when you think about the rent rates and no fault evictions, the not passing this year. When you think about, the precarity of Husky and gender affirming care or coverage of immigrants, like, to make you think that we still have it was really reminding me like what we're seen as and what it takes to live up to that, right? Like, we have to push up. When we can't pat ourselves on the back when we hear that. When we hear like somebody's moved here because they found it really appealing from what they understood, like, that's not a moment to pat yourself on the back. That's a moment to say, I have to do everything I can to make sure that we live up to that expectation.
It's been quite a month with the Supreme Court and just other things that are happening in the community. So, but then it's also been Pride Month, and it's been pretty amazing.
I've been up to my eyeballs in the Out Film Connecticut Festival, and just night before last, we showed the documentary Heightened Scrutiny, following Chase Strangio's efforts at the Supreme Court, and really powerful.
I was supposed to go see that, and then just decided I already knew the ending, so I wasn't ready to watch it yet. Well, I've been to as many Pride gatherings as possible. These days, it's hard. You can't be at everyone because so many towns now have Pride events, and that is super important. And I hope to see even more of them next year. I mean, so many, it was their first time or only their second year doing it. So for me, that's been incredibly important, the visibility of the community. We'll say leading up to Pride Month, I was curious, how would it go? Would it be somber because of the state of the world, the national political climate? And it hasn't been. And I think it's a testament to the community's resilience and commitment to each other to show up, and not just show up, but show up and bring that joy. For me as a parent, it really helped, with all the concerns and fears, to see folks still showing up.
You and I crossed paths at the North Haven Pride, and one of the things that I noticed there, and at some of the other ones I've been at as well, is a fair representation by allies. You see the queer community coming out for a sense of connection, for both, protest and celebration, but I was noticing a lot of allies, folks who maybe didn't necessarily have an immediate first or second person stake in fighting for queer rights, but they came out.
I think there's a growing understanding of when one community is under attack, that it leaves the others vulnerable. And so we have to, even if we're not a part of that community, we need to stand up and be visible.
Yeah.
Another thing that I noticed is so many more in the transgender community showing up and being visible and doing it as their fabulous selves. Just really embracing, gender queerness, showing, my kid, of course, that there's thousands of ways to express yourself, and none of them are incorrect. I will add, seeing you at North Haven Pride, that's one of my favorite things about Pride Month, and has been always, is I get to see so many of the project's partners and collaborators, people like you, people like Mel Cordner from Q Plus, Tony Ferriolo,
yeah.
Rachel from TCC, just so many people. It would take me 15 minutes to list them all. And not only do I get to see them in person, but I get to see them multiple times in person. And so it's our month to get past the Zooms and give each other that giant hug in person that we crave when we're meeting virtually.
And you bank them up for those February days when.
Absolutely.
So far, how many prides have you guys hit?
I would say almost one pride every Saturday and Sunday of June would be a safe guess, give or take.
We started with Jersey Pride,
Yeah.
and then we had Middletown Pride,
Boston Pride,
West
Hartford,
and we did HK Pride, which was nice.
Oh yeah.
Milford Pride is coming up.
I think we've done 5 so far.
As folks who are in on a small business and are a queer-owned small business, what does Pride provide for you? Because, the two of you put in an awful lot of time and effort into these prides. What do you get out of it?
It honestly just gives us the opportunity to connect with community on such a different level. Like normally it's like, we get to connect through social media and online presence, but we actually get to meet people and talk with them and really showcase our work to our niche audience in person, which is so amazing. And I've connected with thousands of people from Pride events. That's how I've really established such a large customer base, is because of these Pride events and being able to really have those conversations with community and showcase the work that we do. And it's really changed our kind of business and helped us grow exponentially over the past few years.
The entire month of June is equivalent to the Super Bowl for other people. We spend months and months preparing for it, and as much time as that takes up, I feel like you don't even really feel how much time you're spending preparing for it, because we're even in when January hit this year, the new year hit, and we were okay, what is our plan for Pride? June is 6 months away, let's get into this. We want to see our people, we want to make it as welcoming and interactive and everything that we can for people. So going off of what Sam said, I think it is a lot of work, but the reward that you get out of networking and meeting other crafty artists or people who make other cool things. I love connecting and I love finding inspiration through other vendors at events like this. So Pride is always so much fun for us every single year.
Yeah, definitely. I've met so many people at Pride events that have booked with me since then. Like, honestly, Pride has been great for just connecting me with clients in general. And I've had such great conversations with people at Pride where they come up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, like I follow you, I follow your work, like I love the work I do," and I just have great conversations with them. Like, I last year I met a couple at Milford Pride and they ended up booking a shoot with me for their graduation, and then they also ended up booking my Thailand trip that I'm hosting. So
Ooh,
being able to make those connections has been so amazing and so helpful to me as a business owner, but also for community because like I'm building more and more community like the more Pride events I go to.
yeah. Tell us about that Thailand trip.
I'm working with Trova Trip, which is like a travel-based company, to host a queer safe group trip to Thailand at the end of the year. And right now I have about 20 people booked for that. I think there's like 4 spots left
Okay.
for it, but it's basically all planned out through this company Trova Trip, and they figure out what all the excursions are going to be and all of that, and they basically just make it into this group trip for people to enjoy where they don't have to focus on figuring out like where to go next, transportation, all that is figured out for us. And it really just gave me the opportunity to host something where people can travel to another country and feel safe in this group of other queer people who are just trying to enjoy our life. I mean, like with all of the laws that are happening and people are scared to travel and like I don't blame them whatsoever. I'm also scared to travel, but I don't want that to stop me from traveling because it's such a huge passion of mine. So being able to bring this group together and make sure that it's safe for them is huge for me.
If you said you've got 4 or 5 slots left open, where should people go if they're interested?
If they go to my website, I have a tab on there that's has all the information. It's travel to Thailand with me, and they can check that out. It's all on my like Instagram as well.
His website is samaverymedia.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley. Okay, before we've got to run here, let's make some enemies. The best Pride you've been to this year.
I would normally say Middletown Pride, but I will say it did pour on me this year, which was not fun. So I would have to go with Boston Pride instead for this year. There was just so many people at that one, and we made so many connections at Boston Pride this year with just the amount, the turnout that we had there. So I definitely think the opportunity to connect with people in the city, and somewhere that's outside of Connecticut was awesome for us.
Not to steal Sam's answer, but I do think typically my favorite Pride does happen to be Middletown Pride, just because I feel like that is where most of our people are. Our networking has really taken a lot of place, and I think our business has grown the most from Middletown Pride. So it's always a fun time to go back there. But I will agree, the weather this year wasn't the best.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. That's shameful. That's,
You gotta put a little emoji over it.
nobody wants to see that.
But I think this year specifically Boston Pride, I think similar reasons to Sam, where there's just so many people in Boston and such like a diverse group of people in Boston, that I think we at Boston Pride, the most products from different, a variety, thank you, that's the word, a variety of stuff at Boston. It's kind of interesting to see some prides you're like, oh, I know this type of product does really, really well here, but Boston is just so diverse and fun, and the people are just so sociable, and they want to know how you made what you made and who's this person in this photograph, and like, is this moss real? How do I take care of this? Like, what is the story behind this? It was a different level of networking, I think, in Boston that was really cool as an artist, to have people interested in like the behind the scenes work of the products that you make.
What do you get out of those interactions when you run into Mel or Tony at these events? What does that give you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the vibe check on those partners in person is really important. Like, okay, this person is okay. They are standing strong. You know, we don't need to alert some of the others that, hey, maybe so and so maybe so and so needs an extra hand right now. So that's super important to me. And there's again the joy that comes with pride that's palpable. Again, stocking up on that in-person joy, for to sustain you for a while, until you really need community again in person. I would say those are the biggest things that I personally get out of it.
When Mel was on the show this season, they said something that really stuck with me, that the queer community, even though it can be, squabbling like any family, I guess, but that
Mm-hmm.
when somebody needs that support, all beef gets set aside and we circle the wagons and we take care of one another. I mean, not to tell tales out of school, but you and I check in on each other regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Are you overextended? Are you taking care of yourself?
Exactly. And within any movement, there's going to be disagreements because it's like anything else. I mean, there are personalities involved. But one thing about the community is that when something is happening, is all that gets set to the side. And we reach out, make sure everyone's okay, see what people need. I mean, last week, the Skermeti decision it impacted different people in different ways. But there was a coming together in what's next, that where all of that was set to the side. And that is a hallmark of the community.
Yeah. And the loss of queer specific crisis care. Phone number was no longer going to provide specific care for queer youth. There again, it brings the community to a point going, okay, well, if that's going to happen, how do we supplement? How do we replace? How do we make sure that our kids are okay?
That news came out, what was it, like 3 hours after Skermeti did.
Yeah.
And it was a devastating blow. And for me, it felt worse than Skermeti.
Yeah.
Because it was a clear message that the federal government does not care about queer lives.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in the community actually took that news worse too. But what you saw instantly happen was people reminding everyone, hey, despite this, here are all the resources that are still available. And, so you can still find suicide prevention resources that will be understanding of the queer experience. We know from, for example, the Trevor Project that in the wake of the election and the inauguration, the wait time was hours long. We need to chip away at things like that so the services are accessible. So people are coming together and making sure that resource is still available in the wake of the federal government's bigotry.
Yeah, that the Trevor Project is not going away. So before I let you go here, your favoritist moment from this year's Pride?
Okay, well, I'm going to violate the one because,
there
by
are
default,
rules here, Combs. There are rules.
Now, one of the best things about me is that I don't follow the rules, right? But as a mom, I think I'm required to say, my daughter June speaking from the stage at Middletown Pride is my favorite. But I also have to say that I had an extraordinary time in the beer garden at Pride in the Park in Norwalk with Matt and Colin and others that I met that day. Ashley, we had a fantastic time hanging out in that beer garden and just talking while the drag performances were going on stage.
I would encourage anybody to get involved with Equality Connecticut. I was reminded we have it is really a collection of really good people who do work day in and day out, people who are at the Capitol, who do things that, are moving policy, who are, engaging with national leaders. But we're also a collection. There's people like I'm thinking about like my friend Tony Ferriolo, who does work day in and day out, both personally and professionally, to help individuals and families who are navigating gender identity and sexuality within their families, going to schools, talking with one teacher at a time, one school administrator, helping one family navigate what their rights are, how to, you know, help make, whether it's a school or a church, like safe and affirming for their kids. Like this is like, it really does take a village, and it takes people, I think, like at the Capitol, but also groups like Q Plus and my friend Mel, and community centers like in Norwalk where people can just come in, and people like Tony Ferriolo who like just work like and respond like to say like, what do you need? Where does it hurt? How can I help?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the things that I've seen that time and again, and it's like what we have to continue to remind ourselves to live up to in Connecticut.
Tony's been on the show several times, and I'm a fan.
He's such a good buddy.
I've said to more than one person in terms of introducing him, I said, well, Tony saves lives. That's I have my job.
Yeah.
Matt, you have your job. Tony saves lives. That's what he does.
Yeah. And it's really like, this is like the revolution. There's a book, what is it? The revolution will not be funded. Well, guess what? The revolution will also not be on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. And so it's like that like he does this like day in and day out. Like, I think he's one of the best examples on our board, like in terms of somebody who like makes the kind of contact of like rooted in, like I said at the top of this, like looking for each other and saying like, what do we need? How can I see you? And how can I help? And that's the magic. I think we're magical people.
This year we were dealing with some, sponsors who their corporate budgets had been cut for DEI work. They were saying, we can sponsor you, but it can't be public. People who have government contracts.
How are you taking care of yourself through all this?
I feel like my self-care routine is mostly involves in a kind of stereotypical lesbian way, a lot of hiking with the dogs. So if it's not raining, there will be some hiking with the dogs. But also we're on to the next, right? We're starting to gear up to plan our big fundraising gala in October, taking some of what we learned from what happened with Pride and some of our sponsors, and also looking at, so the food pantry at TCC between the first quarter of 2024 and 2025 had a 300% increase in demand. So we're looking at ways we can meet that demand. And then I have to say that something that's happening now, and everyone should take out your phone to go to this website, but TCC is doing a needs assessment right now to learn what queer and trans people in Connecticut need so that we can target our programming and our funding. So if you go to ctpridecenter.org and scroll down a little, you'll see the needs assessment in both English and Spanish. And, we can't provide the programming for youth or elders or, I don't know, middle-aged people who really want a softball league if we don't know what they want.
I was tabling at Middletown, so I wasn't able to get down to the green. How did your remarks go?
Very well. The remarks, even in the rain. We were very fortunate in the parade. Very little like mist at points, but it held off. And then Mother Nature was like, "Too bad, so sad. Yeah. We're gonna rain during the main
start swimming
and start swimming." It's very humbling and very honoring to see those individuals who are in ponchos and under umbrellas that were there. They're like, I'm here, and I'm here to be here, whether it's rain or shine. And that's something that we as a community, I think, have strived for, be there. And when I was fortunate to have a moment to speak. It was, I know as when we were younger individuals, we were pretty much told to be like, okay, time to just sit there and not speak and just accept that. And that is not what should be happening. We should be giving these young individuals voices that they've always had, we had when we were younger, yet we were not heard. And a lot of my speaking points specifically were we need to start listening because we're becoming the people who didn't listen to us.
I don't really want to ask this question, but any low points that just
Nah, we ignore those. Yeah.
seems like the best course of action.
Honestly, I don't have time for low points. Like, I gotta focus on everything else. Like there's always gonna be like one or two protesters, let's say, or like one or two like mean comments on the internet. But who cares? Like, we don't do this for them. We do this for us. We do this to acknowledge our history. We do this to celebrate our future. Like, we do this to reconnect with anybody who hasn't been out in the community for a while, to invite new people in who haven't maybe experienced the community before. Like, the cat,
Very
like an
nice.
appearance. You saw
Wow. How many kids did you have marching with you?
a bunch,
A bunch.
a bunch.
Not not a bunch and a half, because that would be too many.
That would be too many. Just one singular bunch.
Okay.
30-ish. We also, no matter how many times we say to everyone, you can walk with us. We would love for you to walk with us. People just don't because they're like, oh, I wasn't sure if that included me. And so as we're walking, we will see our kids from different groups and like start pulling them in, or like kids from that group will pull each other in. So by the end, we always have more people than we started. She did not march with us, but
In spirit. Yeah. Upside down cat.
she lets do put her feet in the air. This is just and we're done. Another interesting thing that I've had happen at the ones that I've been tabling at is folks will come up, either some of them with their kids, some without, and say, hey, can straight kids come if they're like open-minded and affirming, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, yeah, of course. Like, we don't check their gay card at the door, is what I always say, because, who knows what anybody's identity is, but as a kid especially. And like, we don't want to be like not allowing queer kids in because their sister's straight. Like, it's like, of course you can come, as long as you understand that this is a queer focused space, like queer centered space. We're not like keeping people out, gatekeeping based on identity. That would be like counterproductive to what we're trying to do here. So I think it's cool that there's like a stronger push for allies, even like young allies, like youth, teens, to show up for their queer friends and family. So I think that's been really encouraging for me to see.
That took place in one of the local businesses, right? So this is community. It's the families, and it's the economic base of the city. I happen to be right next to the tent for the Russell Library. They were giving out free books. I went up to the library and I got the new Alison Bechdel graphic novel and could not have been happier.
I think for me, more and more, a lot of pride is really, we use pride. Like, we take pride in our identities.
Yeah.
But really it is an expression of just like, I'm really glad to be who I am. I'm really glad to be in a place where it's safe to be who I am. I just want to be who I am. And we use pride to describe that. But honestly, it's just eventually pride stops being a display. And I think that's supposed to be our goal eventually, is that pride is not just a display, and it's not just a celebration, and it's not just a demonstration. Pride becomes a space where people are, and they get to be, and there's no judgment. There's just acceptance and an understanding that we're all parts of a larger organism, our community. It's really easy to get overcommitted, especially in June for a lot of us, because there's so much to do and there's so many different ways to support. I mean, I was tabling at West Hartford Pride last week, which was warm and wonderful. Milford Pride I'll be tabling at with other members of the commission tomorrow. And there's a lot to run around. There's film festivals that I hear some interviewers have been presenting and being present at. There's galas. I know Bristol is having a gala tomorrow night. And we run around a lot, but it is important, I think, also to separate ourselves from the work we're doing and actually look at the outcomes of the work. Again, it was very hard for me to, like, in the moment, see the full impact of Pride Fest. It was very task oriented. I was very in the zone, but it's not even our official videos and our official photos, which I'm currently reviewing. Seeing people post their own videos and seeing how they captured just individuals who were, for a moment, like, just free from concern and just embracing themselves and the people around them. I don't really want to try to ruin the height of emotions it makes me feel with clumsy words, but it is a balm for my soul, and it makes it apparent that the work we do is worthwhile and it is impactful. And you see it on a child's face, you see it on a person in their late 80s face, you see it on the faces of folks who aren't part of the LGBTQI2S+ community, but who are there and witnessing what it looks like when a child feels free, or when a adult is able to break away from their life and look out and say, I belong here and I'm safe here.
100%. A lot of folks ask me, well, what is the Leonard Litz Foundation? And I say it is a family foundation, right? We're not necessarily blood related, but we are found family. This is a lot of the experience of queer people, right? And think about your own family. You don't always get along, right? You don't always see eye to eye. But when an outside force tries to come for you, you come together, And at a time when we have folks at the highest levels of our government messaging us in ways that make it hard to love ourselves and to love one another. I'm looking at your T-shirt right now. It says, "Don't be sorry, be fierce." That's exactly what I think Pride Month has been this year. It's a celebration. It's also an affirmation of, listen, these are human rights. These are not things that we are asking to be bestowed upon us. These are things that we are born with.
We deserve this, as does any other human being.
I mean, like they that's very deliberately planned, and for some of I'm not going to say all, but for some of the people on the other side, the cruelty is the point. I would say to that, even though it is unimaginably hard, it is important to remember the successes. Right. And, just yesterday we're celebrating 10 years of Obergefell, which I know they're going to come after. But June 26th to me is such a special day because not just Obergefell, but the Windsor case came down on June 26, 2013. And by the way, so did Lawrence v. Texas, June 26, 2003.
Everybody go play the lottery right now.
Fun trivia. We have come a long way. And one of my inspirations these days, Congresswoman McBride from Delaware said recently in an interview that if we think of the adversities that our community has been through and overcome, and to think of how easy it would have been for folks in the 60s to say, I give up, this is too much, right? I mean, and they didn't. So we have to take our cue from them. And this is not the time to give up. This is the time to redouble our efforts. That's what we're doing at Leonard Litz. We're trying to assure all our partners that we're not going anywhere. And we are here to stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in this fight that we will win. There's no question.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Claire McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Monies.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.